So, good evening, everybody. I will call the meeting to order. We have three public meeting portions and then a briefing followed by, I believe it's 3 or 4 recommendations in the regular meeting. So I'll begin by reading the public meeting introduction. This notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding the collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Building, and Licensing Services. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Exemption to this rule is outlined in Bylaw number 2006-75 to delegate various planning approvals to staff and adopt certain procedures for the processing of planning applications, subject to delegated authority. Council has authorized staff to use discretion in determining if an application can become a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. We do have 2 combined public meeting comprehensive reports for zoning bylaw amendment to 254 Collingwood Street and 1350 Woodfield Crescent. A decision will be made at the regular portion of the planning meeting tonight. Information gathered at public meetings is then referred back to Planning, Building, and Licensing Services staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to the Planning Committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following Council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. So, we'll move on to our first public meeting. It's a bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision, and it's for 800 John Marks Avenue. It's file number D35002-2018. So, whoever has up. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Mike Keane, and I'm a land use planner with Foten Consultants. And I'm here this evening to present to the committee applications for zoning bylaw amendment, plan of subdivision, and plan of common element condo. And And this property is located in the east end of the city. It's in the St. Lawrence Business Park. And you might be wondering why there's an amendment, because this application is actually a site that's currently under construction. It's a 5.5 hectare site, has frontage on John Marks Avenue, and it's in an area that's basically a business park with some residential uses. And in 2017, this site had a site plan application approved, and that's what you're seeing is currently under construction. So this is the Kingston East Medical Campus, and there are basically 11 buildings that are approved on the site plan. And then there is an area that would be the parking, the stormwater, all of those features. So what the owners decided was that they would like to be able to sell the individual buildings. And so that's the application that's before this committee tonight. So in terms of the official plan, it's a business park industrial site. So the use that is being constructed complies. The zone on the property is a special business park zone that permits the uses that are located there, office, clinic, and restaurant type uses. When we reviewed the site plan, and from a zoning perspective, we were primarily wanting to deal with the fact that there would be no frontage on the individual buildings. So the zoning bylaw amendment is primarily for that reason, but in reviewing the site plan, we wanted to make sure that there were no other shortcomings. And one shortcoming that we found was that the driveway that's been approved on the site plan was 11 meters wide instead of 9. So we're recommending recognizing that in the zoning bylaw amendment as well. So if I move forward to the actual application, this kind of really shows how it works in very simple terms. From a plan of subdivision standpoint, there would be 12 parcels of tied land, while the outer box is one block on the plan of subdivision, and that one block is what ties these individual parcels together. So you can't buy one of these parcels without being part of the condominium, so that the snow is plowed in the parking lot, the stormwater features are taken care of, and so forth. So the plan of subdivision, which is on the screen, looks identical to the plan of condominium, but it's essentially a flip, where all those 12 blocks, one of those buildings being joined, is now part of the parcels that would be associated with the condominium. So in terms of moving forward, there's no actual changes being proposed to the current site plan. And the applications that are before this committee are, one, technical in nature for the zoning bylaw amendment to acknowledge the fact that the buildings are close together and there are separation distances that if they were separate parcels as opposed to common element parcels, it would have to be acknowledged. And it's to largely acknowledge the tenure. Without these applications, it's one parcel and the owner would not be able to sell the buildings. And in reviewing the applications, we find it to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and the official plan. And as a result, the applications are appropriate. And I'm pleased to assist the committee with any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to the committee. Are there any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Here I go again. I'll turn to staff. I'm going to apologize in advance. I just got in at 2 in the morning from Tucson, so I'm a little jet lagged today. But yes, staff.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that notice was provided in accordance with the Planning Act with signs posted on the property 20 days in advance of this public meeting, and notices sent by mail to property owners within 120 meters. And to date, I have not received any written correspondence or phone calls or counter inquiries.
Questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation.
Public.
I am definitely hurting today. Public comments. Is there anybody in the public? Yes. If you'd like to come to the mic.
I actually have sent everyone in the, on council, my comment.
Yes, we're talking to a public meeting
Yes, so
presentation
may
for
I-
Kingston East development for the medical center.
Oh, for the medical center?
Yes,
Oh, I'm
so
sorry.
I think your letter is on
Yes,
a, on
that's
a
right.
recommendation that's coming forward later. Thank you. So seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see if I can get my second wind here. Our next public meeting is in regards to 254 Collingwood Street, and it's file number D14009, 2018. And it's a request for a zoning amendment.
If you don't want to, but
So the floor is yours.
Perfect. Okay, so my proposal for this application, I'm just going to present the justification plan that was done up by IBI Group for me on my behalf. So basically the plan, I'm just going to scroll through here a bit, if I can do this. So this is my property right here. It's 254 Collingwood Street. It's between Earl and Union on Collingwood Street, and the Cooper Street's adjacent there. So it's just on the fringe of the Queens District area. So my plan is to get a zoning bylaw amendment so that we zone it from a A4 zoning property or in that zone, and we make it from a 1-family dwelling to a 2-family dwelling. Basically, the property meets a lot of the standards. This is the front of the property that are required. There's just one area of relief that needs to be done. Currently, I'll just give you kind of a layout of the property. That should be here, and it's not gonna go, but anyway, so at the back, at the rear of the property, there's 2 parking spots with a turnaround. And then as you see, there's an existing driveway, which we're gonna use. This existing driveway will be accessible to the back parking. And then the actual current footprint won't change at all for the property. So we're changing no footprint, and basically what's happening is there's going to be 4 bedrooms up and 2 bedrooms down. This will be 2 units up and down. So they're going to take advantage of the space that's given. So basically this document has a bunch of different things on it, and it outlines all the provincial policy statements and how it aligns and or my property co-aligns or coincides with that. And also it talks about the official plan and how my property also is aligned with the official plan. It's in a medium density residential area, and it actually is within those means. And talks about intensification and how the city's looking to grow, and this helps the city grow, but also not take up more land footprint. And then it talks about a whole bunch of things like shadowing and loss of privacy, blah, blah. But basically, my property, nothing's really changing on the outside. There's no footprint that's changing, and there's no height alteration, so that won't really affect anybody. And so basically, if you go through all these things, it tells you that we are aligned and in line with the city's regulations. So I just want to go through, and then functional needs as well, it works. But I just want to go through the main reason why we're looking for a zoning bylaw amendment is that the lot area right now is 331 square meters. And for a residential unit, for a 1-family dwelling, you need 418 square meters per unit. So for this, we actually need 836. So our relief required is 505. But all the other areas of where zoning requirements are and proposed relief, we have no relief required. So if you just look at different areas here, interior lot, corner lot, front yard lot, we have no relief required. And the list goes on. Our landscape space is actually 45% of the property, which is 15% more than you need. And And if we just keep going on, prohibited uses, require parking spaces. We have 2 spots, 1 per unit. And then the parking is also at the rear of the property, not the front. And then just from all the other aspects of things, the projections, amenity area, we have the amenity areas within indoor space and outdoor space is ample. And then these are just the calculations that's shown below. So overall goal of the property is to basically turn it into from a 1-family unit dwelling to 2-unit dwelling. And the only relief we're looking for is that footprint relief of the actual lot. And then this is just my planner's recommendations of why the project should be approved. I have a bit more of an actual document here if I can find it. I'm not sure if I can. Yeah, so this is the property again. And I wish this was bigger, but it's fine. Actually, I can condense this, can't I? No, I cannot. Here we go. So anyways, this is the existing property, and this is the current lot lines, the current driveway there. And then this is the proposed. My other one showed the little hammerhead turnaround, which is actually what's going to happen, not this one. But other than that, all things are the same. So this is the existing floor 1, and then this is what we're going to turn it into. We're going to have a vestibule at the front of the building, so you walk in the front door. It'll be all fire rated, fire separated. You'll turn right to go up the stairs, and that'll be the upstairs unit, and you go straight through, and that'll be the bottom unit for unit 1 and unit 2. This is the basement. Nothing's really changing down there. You can't really use it anyways. And then this is floor 2. This is the existing. So what we're trying to do, or we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is take these walls out of the study and the bedroom and turn that into a living room kitchen combo. And then you have another staircase going upstairs. And you'll see it up there. So this is the existing upstairs. What we're going to try to do is optimize the space, is move the actual bedroom to the center of the house, and then put 2 bedrooms upstairs. So they both have a window. And again, this is my calculations for the property. But that's kind of my idea and what I'm trying to do. If you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to staff. If you'd like to comment on the response from the community.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With this application, notices were mailed to all property owners within 120 meters of the parcel, and signs were posted on the property for 20 days prior to the meeting. In response, we've had no comments by telephone or counter or any other inquiries in response to those notices.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to the committee now. Are there any questions or comments regarding this? No? As a councillor who represents a similar district, I'm usually very supportive of the idea of converting 8-bedroom or 10-bedroom into multiple units. I think it improves the neighborhood atmosphere to have 2 4-bedroom rather than 1 8-bedroom dwelling.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. So I will turn to the public. Are there any comments or questions from the public tonight? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this is one of the 2 applications that there will be a recommendation coming to the floor tonight. So, and now I'll move to our final public meeting, and it's Creekside Valley Development, 1350 Woodfield Crescent, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. Good evening, members of Planning Committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Yuko Leclerc. Excuse me. I'm a land use planner with Foten Consultants, and I'm presenting an application for zoning bylaw amendment at 1350 Woodfield Crescent. I'm also here with Kyle Nielsen from Forefront Engineering, who is leading the final plan of subdivision approvals process and will help with answering questions from the committee and the public. So our subject site is in the city's west end. It's in the Westbrook neighborhood. It's a fairly large property. It's just under 40 hectares in area. It fronts onto the north side of Princess Street, as well as a number of local streets within Westbrook. To the north of our site is a hydro corridor, and to the north of that are agricultural and rural lands. To the east of the site is the Collins Creek Wetland Complex, a significant environmental protection area. And then to the south, on the other side of Princess Street, is the Glenvale Environmental Protection Area. Obviously, to the west of our subject property is Westbrook, a residential community with a public school and a park right near to the property. There is also a gas pipeline that bisects the lands. I'm going to try and get my cursor to show exactly where that is. So that's right about there. It just crosses right through the property. Excellent. There have been previous land use planning approvals on this property. So in 2015, there was an official plan amendment, a draft plan of subdivision, and a zoning bylaw amendment. And the purpose of those is to allow the redevelopment of the lands. The official plan amendment changed the land use designations on the site to what they currently are. There were some technical amendments as well in the official plan amendment side of things. And there was a site-specific policy that allowed and required a minimum residential net density. Associated with that official plan amendment was the draft plan of subdivision, which was approved with conditions. That allowed 381 residential lots, some parkland, open space, environmental protection areas, of course the internal road network, and some various utility and infrastructure aspects as well. And then implementing the official plan and implementing the draft plan of subdivision was a zoning bylaw amendment, which changed the zoning on the site to a site-specific residential type 2 zone, and then some open space and environmental protection zones. The site is currently going through the final plan of subdivision process. So that's the final step before the lands are being developed. Those approvals are getting sought right now, and there is some construction that's happening on the site right now through a pre-servicing agreement as the engineering drawings have been finalized. So just showing the current land use designations on the site. Near the south and east of the site is the environmental protection area and open space, and the balance of the lands is residential. The site-specific policy, I may have mentioned this, requires a minimum net density of 22 units per net hectare, which is very significant to the application that's before you this evening, and I'll get to that in a moment. So the current zoning on the site, the zoning bylaw amendment application applies only to the site-specific residential type 2 zone, so they're not touching the environmental protection area and open space zones, and the site-specific zoning on the site was developed to implement the draft plan of subdivision that was designed for the property. So the official plan requires a minimum density of 22 units per net hectare, which means a very compact form of development. The draft plan was designed around that, and a number of these provisions were intended to implement that, for, in particular, the minimum lot frontage, but also all of the other setbacks and associated provisions that were amended out were changed to suit the form of development that was being proposed. Now, what was not amended as part of that original zoning bylaw amendment application, but was intended to be, were the minimum lot area requirements and the maximum lot coverage requirements of the residential type 2 zone. So those are both, currently, they were not amended by the site-specific zone, so they continue to apply, and they conflict with the draft plan of subdivision. So the minimum lot area requirements, which are in square feet, so they predate the adoption of metric for inland use planning, and they conflict with a number of lots. So 150 of the 381 residential lots in the draft plan of subdivision don't meet these requirements. So, which just shows that they were intended to be amended out and they just weren't. So we're seeking that amendment at this time. It is very much a technical application. There's no change to the draft plan that's necessary to make this happen. It's just to reflect the plan that's been designed and intended for this site. Now, another item that's also being carried forward through the zoning bylaw amendment is the minimum landscaped open space provision. So that, again, it applies in the parent zone, but through this zoning bylaw amendment, we would be carrying it forward into the site-specific zone so that it's very clearly intended to apply to this proposed subdivision. This application, so recapping what I've said, we're seeking to remove the minimum lot area and maximum lot coverage requirements, apply the minimum landscaped open space in the site-specific zone, and also lift the holding provision from Phase A. So in our original application, we had asked to remove the holding provision from phases A, B, and C, so the first 3 phases of development. It's come to light that the servicing capacity and the infrastructure upgrades that are necessary to allow that to happen are underway, but they're not quite there yet. So it's only possible to bring forward phase A at this time and lift the holding provision from that phase. So the addendum to tonight's package, which was provided just before the meeting, clarifies that we're only seeking to lift the provision, the holding provision from phase A. Again, I want to make it extremely clear that there are no changes proposed to the draft plan in order to accommodate the proposed zoning bylaw amendment this evening. Recapping what I've just said, just going to let you read it. I'm not going to repeat myself again. So with that, I'll encourage any questions or comments from the committee, and Kyle will be here as well to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Staff, comment? Thank you. And I believe you're a fresh face. If you was yourself, that would be great.
Hello, everyone. I'm James Barr. I'm one of the new senior planners in the Planning Division. I can confirm that notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act. A sign was posted on the property in multiple locations 20 days in advance of the public meeting. In addition, notices were sent by mail to owners of 92 properties within 120 meters of the subject lands. We have received public comment on this application. It is detailed in the first comprehensive report as Exhibit J and reviewed by the report as well. Outside of that, we have received no additional comments on the application's phone calls, emails, or the written correspondence.
Thank you. I'll turn to the committee before we go to the public. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Turner.
Thank you, and through you, Council. I have a question concerning some of these diagrams. One diagram has a road showing going to Princess Street, and the other one doesn't, or has some kind of access to Princess Street. I'm just a little confused because in the Exhibit J, they had asked for a road to come through, and I'm confused. Was that ever taken care of, or?
Kyle Nielsen with Forefront Engineering. I'll answer that question.
Perfect, thank you.
Through draft plan approval, there is a road to Princess Street, which I think was labeled as Street A on the draft plan. Good if you want to. Which is the long roads proposed. So that is proposed. That is where the construction access will be to the site. I believe the public comment you're referring to asks for that to be the construction access. It already is the construction access. There is limited construction access from the existing subdivision because we are actually, as part of this application, reconstructing Roselawn Place. So there is some construction within the existing street, and for material access to that area because of grade issues, there's minor construction access there. There are conditions. The site is under a pre-servicing agreement currently and under construction. There are conditions in that pre-servicing agreement to limit access to Roselawn Place.
Thank you for that. So just to get my mind around it, it's a 10 then?
No, that will be a road. It's not being constructed as part of phase A of the subdivision, but as part C of the subdivision.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll turn to the public now. Are there any members of the public that have questions or concerns regarding this? Yes, if you'd care to just come up to one of these mics, that would be great. And if you can just give your name and address for the clerk. Thank you.
My name is Terry Grew. I live on, I own 1183 Roselawn Place. Roselawn Place since 1957, and it was a brand new construction back then. We've lived there since then. This is a dead-end road, and there was 4 houses on it. There still is, except for one access to Gunter's house that runs off of there. Sorry, I'm nervous. Our problem is, first of all, we showed up the other morning and there was construction. We couldn't get to the house. But also they have this access road going off of the end of the dead end. Now, we bought that house and have lived there as a dead-end road, all 4 houses on that street, and now they're putting a road off of the dead end. And to me, statutes of limitation would not allow someone to do that to an existing subdivision. When you're living on a dead-end road forever, that's how your houses were made, and now all of a sudden they're cutting a street right into the end of it. And we are protesting that, like all 4 houses, all 4 members of the, this was not ever presented to us before. They always told us that it would be an access from the highway of Highway 2, but never accessing Roselawn Place, which is, and when they say minor, I have pictures, there's major construction. They did all the paving and everything a couple of years ago, and then they've ripped it all up, like there is no road left. So,
Thank you.
but my main concern is this, the access to Roselawn Place. Like, it is a dead-end road. It always has been since 1957.
Thank you. I should have pointed out before, we collect all of the questions from the public, and then we give both the proponents and staff an opportunity to address those.
Right.
So,
Because originally they were saying that the houses would back onto Roselawn from the street in towards the swamp, and I have not heard anything different, but when I talked to some of the construction workers, they were saying that's not the case. So I think we deserve to know exactly what's going on.
You do indeed, and they'll have an
you.
opportunity to answer that question. Thank you. Any other members of the public? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank Dixon, 495 Alfred, Apartment 2, K7K4J4. Thanks for the presentation tonight. I did follow this file when it came to the committee 3 years ago, I think. And I've got 2 additional questions, I think, from what I talked about then. There have been issues around the lack of services up in the Westbrook area in terms of enough water and sewer being able to be provided. I know they were planning to put in an expanded station up there to allow for more development. So I'm just wondering, your project is going to have 381 units. Is the capacity that's now in place going to be enough to handle this development from that standpoint? So that's question number 1. And my second question relates off one of the questions from a member of the committee with respect to the road that's now going to be used for access for construction, and it'll become a permanent road when the project is completed. And I'm going to tie this in with the lack of transit service up in the Westbrook area. And I'm not sure how this is going to come in. Westbrook is an established community. It's well to the west and north of any Kingston transit service that's now in place. And I'm just going to make a suggestion. Now that you have this road in there, it would seem to be a great place for a new route to come in, maybe starting at Cataraqui Town Center, going along Princess up into Westbrook, and then coming back to the east and then down this road and then returning to Cataraqui Town Center, right? So certainly Kingston Transit has been expanding its service. We're expanding our ridership, one of the best services in Canada. And I would just like to see that continue so the new residents in this area can be served. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I saw another hand over here. If you'd care to come to the mic. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melanie Surson. I am a resident at 1191 Roselawn Place, and I have a lot of concerns about the construction going on. First of all, in my opinion, it is not minor construction. Many days, we are told to access the current construction road off of Highway 2. And then other times I'm able to go through Roselawn Place. So my concern is that Roselawn Place is a dead-end road, has been, as Terry said, since 1957, and we were not told about it becoming an access to the new subdivision. That's one of my concerns. Another one of my concerns is yesterday when I was coming home, I was traveling down the access road off of Highway 2, and tragically, someone has run over a turtle. And it had eggs. The turtle was gone. I brought my concern very emotionally to the construction workers, and after I had let them know, it was brought to my attention that that is the second turtle that has been hit. It is marshland all through that area. I also have pictures where there's been digging and there's cattails. Another concern of mine is I went to work one day and my street, 4 houses, had beautifully treed on the right-hand side facing the swamp. We were told that there was houses going in there, and I understand that we need to grow as a city. However, I was told that that tree line would not be touched. I come home and every tree, almost every tree, there was 2 trees left, which were removed the following day, all of them gone. This happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, right when there's baby birds, baby squirrels, and that was very upsetting to me. Again, we were told they were going to be backyards. Now we're told they're front yards. It's just been very difficult to keep myself together because every day is something new that we had no idea was going to happen. And Mr. Harrison was approached about the trees being cut down, and he explained that there was no birds or squirrels in the trees. Those are my concerns. The environmental impact that this construction is having. Turtles are right now at risk of becoming endangered, and I feel like a huge disregard for the wildlife and for the marshland.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any further questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll go back to the committee. Are there any comments? Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. You get to respond, and then the committee will have some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just going to pass along the responses to these questions. They do primarily deal with the construction aspect of what's going on now, so I'm just going to have Kyle answer those questions.
So again, Kyle Nielsen with Forefront Engineering. I'm the project manager as well as the senior engineer on this project. That access to Roselawn Place was always proposed as part of the draft plan of subdivision. It's really not subject of tonight's application. There have always been 7 lots proposed fronting on Roselawn Place. The main purpose for that access to Roselawn Place is the city tries to eliminate dead ends where possible for garbage collection, snow removal, various other reasons. We'll speak to the servicing quickly. Right now, currently, the Westbrook pumping station is under construction. The pumps are being upgraded to satisfy this development and other developments in the area. Currently, there is capacity within the system for Phase A as proposed. That's why the holding provision is only being removed for Phase A and will be reduced for the remaining lots in subsequent applications.
Just jump on the transit comment through you, Mr. Chair, that I think that can be addressed by staff.
The trees on Roselawn Place, so the trees on the property were subject to a tree inventory. There was a tree preservation plan and inventory completed as part of the final plan of subdivision. The number of trees being removed is much less than the number of trees that we are planting and reinstating in the future phases of the development and the current phase of development. Regarding the nesting and birds, there are conditions with within the pre-servicing and staff comments and on the engineering design drawings that there's no work to proceed in areas of nesting birds and squirrels. Forefront has a site representative on time, full time. To date, I have not received any complaints regarding it or been notified by my staff that there has been an issue. Regarding the turtles, yesterday afternoon I became aware there was a turtle that was struck by the access road and Princess Street. Since then, we have installed additional silt fencing, put additional signage up, and we're going to be doing a tailgate with the construction staff on site to walk them through with procedures. They've already been advised that if there's turtles in the area, basically that all work is to stop in the area and then that they are to proceed out of the area.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Sanik.
Thank you, Chair. With those two comments, I must ask these questions. I do believe that the Migratory Bird Act prevents the time of year where trees are cut down. So I think that would apply to your subdivision. And I just wonder if you have other plans to cut down more trees within the window that the Migratory Bird Act applies to. Like, I agree. I don't think you're allowed to cut down trees at this time of year.
You have to cut down trees. You're not allowed to cut down trees with nesting habitat within the trees.
Sorry, so through you, Mr. Chair, that you check those trees, any type of nest? I'll just leave it there. I just can't believe it. And then about the turtles, so this did come to Planning Committee back in probably 2013. It wasn't this round of council. It was the last round of council. That's when we approved the entire subdivision and the road at Roselawn. But I specifically remember your environmental impact study by Ecological Services that had been commissioned for this subdivision. And it said in that report, no turtles in the area had been observed. So I just want to make that point, just because that's really upsetting to hear that 2 turtles have just been killed. And you've probably seen all the turtles last week on Princess Street, right at Westbrook Creek, a provincially significant wetland that were nesting on the side of Princess Street right there. And it's just obvious from your access road, how there's a wetland on either side. So, maybe my question can be, you do remember your environmental impact study that said no turtles were observed in the area?
I believe there was some discussion on turtles. I think the discussion was there were no turtles that were species at risk in the area. There were comments provided by Queens of inventories conducted in that area, and I don't think they denied any turtles. There was discussion about installing turtle fencing actually along the new proposed roadway through the wetland. And if I recall, the discussion was the main migratory route for the turtles is north-south, and that turtle fencing actually along that roadway would probably lead to more fatalities on Princess Street itself. I'll leave it at that.
I have a
Excuse
comment.
me.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. The rules allow people one opportunity to speak, so I apologize. And if there's information that you'd still like to share with the committee, if you do it in written form through the clerk or through our planning department, then we'll get that information and it'll be duly noted and by staff. So, thank you. Any further questions? Would you care to take the chair for?
Sure, Chair, and I recognize you.
Thank you. A couple of things. I'm curious, and staff are aware of, I always have a little reluctance when there's a comprehensive report and recommendation immediately following a public meeting. Because the purpose, of course, of a public meeting is to give the public an opportunity to speak and to give staff and the proponents an opportunity to respond to those comments and questions. We have two of those quick follow-up ones. The one that we heard before, the first one this evening, was really had no public response in the neighborhood, nobody here that had concerns. It was of a fairly minor nature. So I'm not going to question that one coming forward on the same day. We have had response tonight from that. So I just want first to ask staff or the proponents, is there an overwhelming reason why this is a time-sensitive proposal? And then I'll turn to the committee and suggest, since the chair doesn't move motions, I would be happy to support or second a motion to defer to our next planning meeting to give staff and the proponents an opportunity to respond. So, but perhaps staff or you could respond to why this would be time-sensitive.
Go ahead. I'm the chair, actually. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. So in terms of timing, I don't think the issue is so much the timing. From a staff perspective, I guess what I want to make sure is that the committee understands that even if this is deferred back to staff, it won't change the current recommendation. We can include the comments, but the recommendation is going to stand. And the reason for that is because this is not coming for approval as a subdivision. That's passed, that's been done. And those comments, of course, if they came at the time, would have been taken into consideration. But what's in front of Planning Committee tonight, in terms of what's being asked to approve, the comments that were made will not have an impact on that recommendation.
But as I understand it, it would give staff and the proponents an opportunity to respond to any concerns that were expressed.
Thank you, and through you. So we would, as I indicated, we would include them in the report that would come back to the next Planning Committee, but it would not alter the recommendation in any way.
Through you, Madam Chair, as well. There is an opportunity outside of the public consultation process that's related to this particular zoning bylaw amendment for communication between the city, the construction team, and the residents. And I think that that might be a more appropriate means of addressing those concerns than bringing it back to Planning Committee, where those comments would not have any bearing on the zoning bylaw amendment that's being proposed.
I will say this is the public meeting process, and the public questions or issues that they bring forward, this is their only opportunity, besides an opportunity to speak again at the comprehensive report stage, to have their concerns addressed or considered. And what I was proposing would be a 2-week deferral to our next planning meeting to give the public that respect and opportunity to have their questions responded to. So,
through you, Chair, I'd just like
Yes.
to make one comment is, through the draft plan approval, OP amendment and zoning amendment, we have already had 2 previous public meetings regarding this file. The comments tonight have no bearing on the application at hand. It's very minor in nature to make some zoning corrections. It has, it really has nothing to do with the road layout, construction activities, or any boundaries on the site themselves. Thank you.
I appreciate that opinion. I will say that I will, if anybody on the committee wants to move it to a brief 2-week deferral, I would support that. Yeah, and that will come forward when the recommendation comes forward. So that was our final public meeting. We'll now move into, unless the committee has any further questions, we'll move into our regular planning committee meeting.
Give you back the chair, Councillor Neal.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll call the official Planning Committee meeting number 13, 2018 to order, and I'll call this meeting to order. Approval of the agenda, a mover and a seconder. Councillor Sanik and Councillor Turner, I think, was raising her hand. All those in favor? Carried. There was, I'm sorry, there was an addendum that I should have, yeah, there we go. It's here somewhere. There we are. There's an addendum that I'd like moved and seconded to be included, and it has to do with the Woodfield Crescent Creekside Valley developments, and it's of a technical nature. Just to clarify some issues, if there's a mover and a seconder, I believe we all have this in front of us. Great. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now I'll request a confirmation of the minutes from June 7th. A seconder and a mover. Councillor Sanik seconded it. Councillor Turner moved it. All those in favor? Carried. We do have, excuse me, disclosure of pecuniary interests. Seeing none. We do have a delegation, a briefing from Greg Newman, Manager Policy Planning, and Anne-Marie Bayo. I'm sorry, I should have that down pat by now. I apologize. Intermediate Planning will be present to speak to the committee regarding urban pending and committed housing supply and lifespan review, January 1st, 2017. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to provide a very brief introduction. My colleague Anne-Marie will then walk you through a presentation, the summary of our urban pending and committed housing supply and lifespan review. We give this presentation on an annual basis. It's essentially an update of all the housing that we have coming through the approvals pipeline. It sets some assumptions to say that if all this housing was made available tomorrow, this supply of housing would last X number of years. So we're somewhat obligated to do this review to ensure we're making decisions that are consistent with provincial policy. And with that said, I'll turn it over to my colleague to go through the presentation. Thanks.
Hello, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chair, staff, members of Planning Committee, and members of the public. As Greg has mentioned, we're going to present to you the Urban Pending and Committed Housing Supply and Lifespan Review. Information from January 2017 to the end of December 2017. This information is important as it informs our long-term range planning activities. The provincial policy statement requires that planning authorities provide an appropriate range and mix of housing types and densities to meet projected requirements of current and future residents. The PPS contains policies which introduce minimum housing supply targets, and they are the following: to maintain at all times the ability to accommodate residential growth for a minimum of 10 years, and also to maintain at all times land with servicing capacity sufficient to provide at least a 3-year supply of residential units. Again, these are minimum standards. So with regards to the actual pending and committed housing supply, these are all Planning Act applications that are active within the urban area. And we have reviewed 56 applications, which is part of this inventory. And what we have done is that we have separated them into pending and committed. So pending is the Planning Act applications that are currently in review, and they include site plans, zoning bylaw amendments, and secondary plans, and our committed applications, which include registered and draft approved plans. And we have also looked at this in terms of mapping this out through sub-areas of the city, which include the west, east, and central areas. So, now that the laser pointer works, this is the Kingston West portion of the city. And we have 3,319 committed units, and they are shown in our draft-approved plans of subdivision and registered subdivisions that you see in front of you as Westbrook Meadows, Woodhaven, Midland Park, and Cataraqui North. We have our pending units sitting at 2,433. So you see these in blue. So along Princess Street, it's the retirement facility, as well as the apartment building at 845 Gardner's Road near the mall. And we also have the Graceland subdivision at Bay Ridge and Taylor Kidd that's currently in review as well. When we're looking at the east portion of the city, our committed units are sitting at 254 units, and that's mainly the Baxter North, Riverview subdivisions, and our pending units are sitting at 95 units, and that is the apartment building at 48 Point St. Mark's, which is currently at the Ontario Municipal Board, now known as the LPAT. When we're looking at the central area of the city, our committed units are sitting at 293, and they include the townhouse developments along south of 401, Conacher and Shannon Drive. And in terms of our pending units, it's quite significant at 4,319. So we're looking along Princess Street in Williamsville, as well as the Inner Harbor area. So 652 Sage Condos, that's sitting at 300 units, which is an application we received in 2017, as well as the Davis Tannery that was also received in 2017 as well, sitting at 1,500 units. So I've spoken to before about 48 Point St. Mark's at the Ontario Municipal Board, now known as the LPAT. We have two others, as you know, 223 Princess Street, as well as 18 and 51 to 57 Queen Street, for a total of 687 units. So these are the units that are at the board right now, and it's important to note that it does become a timing issue because it could delay these units coming to the market, or could preclude the application altogether from coming to the market. If we actually took the average annual demand, which I will be speaking out further later into the presentation, it could take approximately 3 years for these units to come to market. So when we look at our building permit activity, we actually review this information for a 10-year period. Now we're in 2017. We've reviewed the information from 2008 to 2017. And this is a chart showing the figures here. So we've broken the information by unit type. So we have our single family, semi-detached, row houses and multiple units. And one of the trends that we see is that we see our single detached slightly declining, and then we see an upward increase in our multiple dwelling units from 2008, 2017. That could be assumed by just customer preference from a single detached, them wanting to live in a multiple unit. And we've also plotted the vacancy rate. So this is the rental vacancy rate from a CMHC. And as you can see in 2017, we have dropped from 2.6 to 0.7, which is a significant drop. You could sort of see through this chart that there are periods of correlation where the multiple units, as there's more construction of them, the vacancy increases. The drop from 2.6 to 0.7 could be as a result of the lag or in time with regards to building permit issuance to final building occupancy. This is a summary of our 10-year residential building permit activity. And this information is important because it also gives us the unit type and percentages here, and it also gives us the average number of units per year. So as of 2017, the average annual demand at the bottom there is 563. That's 563 units from 2008 to 2017. And this figure is used to calculate our lifespan. So what is lifespan? Lifespan is the measure of the total annual housing divided by the average annual demand, and it's the assumed length of time that would take for approved units to be consumed by the market, to be made available. So there are assumptions that we consider in determining as to what is our lifespan, and they are that all units are available immediately. There is no preference for unit type. The rate of building permit issuance is consistent with the current 10-year average, so that is our annual demand of 563, and that there will be no appeals of an application to the local planning appeals tribunal. So this is our committed units. So these are our registered and draft approved subdivisions. And what we've done here is that we've separated it by unit type. So we have our singles, semis, townhouses, and multiple units. And what we've done is that we've reviewed that against the provincial policy minimum 3-year housing requirement. And as you can see from the total, at 6.9 years, we are satisfying the PPS 3-year housing requirement. If we look at our pending units, which consist of our zoning bylaw amendments, site plans, and secondary plans, taking into consideration the unit type, and also the total, we're sitting at currently 12.1 years. And if we add our committed and pending units, again by dwelling type, and then also looking at the overall total units, we are sitting at 19 years, which satisfies the PPS minimum 10-year housing requirement for residential development. So as we were reviewing this information, we really wanted to know where we stood in terms of how we compare to other municipalities. So we had the opportunity to look at Ottawa, York Region, Cambridge, Guelph, and Peterborough, and we looked at how they determined what the lifespan is and what their methods were. So as I've mentioned before, the minimum 10-year supply requirement for residential development for City of Kingston lifespan is 19 years, and the minimum 3-year supply requirement for servicing capacity is 6.9 years. So as you can see here, we have, if we look at the 10-year, we're sitting at 13 years versus 51 years, so that's the range. And if we're looking at the 3-year supply requirement for servicing capacity, we're looking at 5 years to 12.7 years. So from this chart, it appears that the City of Kingston lifespan, it appears that we're generally aligned with what is projected for the housing capacity or housing supply in other municipalities. So in conclusion, we found that the city's urban pending and committed housing supply indicates a supply of housing which is consistent with the PPS and the desire to accommodate for an appropriate range and mix of housing types and densities, and that the lifespan figures as noted for the city are generally aligned with those found in other Ontario jurisdictions. So what will we do? What will we be doing with this information? What we've presented to you is that it's our pending and committed, our urban developments, and they only consider the planning applications that are active. So what we're intending to do is to combine this information with a review of vacant residential lands, as well as lands that are zoned but not fully developed for residential use, in order to conduct a comprehensive review and capture the potential supply of housing available in the city and also the regional market area. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Questions or comments from the committee? Yes. Councillor McLaren.
Hi, looking at the third last screenshot you had there, all pending and committed units, it looks like the single detached homes are like 6 months below the housing requirement. Am I reading that right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, which slide are we?
The one there, if you look right there under single, it's below the 10, the dash line that says 10. It looks like it's at 9.5.
The 9.5 is for the single.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to assist, the dash line really only applies to the total. So it really only applies to the last bar in this bar graph. It applies to the overall 19-year supply. So it's what we're trying to illustrate here is that there are varying demands for different types of housing. So depending on the supply of that type that we're putting into the market compared against the demand, the lifespan is different. So you can see we have a very healthy supply of semi-detached homes coming into the market because traditionally the demand for that type of housing has been less than it has been for other types. However, that's likely the result of not us as a municipality not adding a lot of that type of housing to the market. So there's a forthcoming supply. We suspect that demand will shift relative to that supply. So these sort of numbers are constantly fluctuating as the demand for different types of housing changes. Singles might be partially the result of not having a lot of singles added to the market. Last year, as Anne-Marie mentioned, was probably one of the poorest years in the past 10 for the supply of new single detached homes to the Kingston market. So this is ever changing.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Thank you very much. I know this is really important information because we have a very low vacancy rate, a very poor way of counting through, because we don't count students primarily through census data. So there's a suggestion that we actually have flatlined population-wise, but that isn't what the real estate market is telling us, and it's not what the building community is telling us either. So it's important information. Thank you very much. So we'll move on. If any member of the public has any questions regarding this report, the report can be accessed. Is it on Dash or is it available through?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the report is currently only available via this agenda, tonight's agenda online.
Okay.
If people have follow-up questions or want more information, they can contact Anne-Marie or myself, Greg Newman.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to recommendation A. Sorry, no, here we go. File number, the Collingwood Street, 254 Collingwood Street, and that was the public meeting that we just heard. I will say that in the business portion, the portion of the meeting is open to the public. The city has initiated a new process in which members of the public will have the opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on comprehensive reports presented before the Planning Committee. Those wishing to provide oral comments at this meeting will be invited to do so. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. So we now make that available, that opportunity. So if you'd care to speak to it.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a summary of the, can't see, okay, need to be short. This is a summary of the comprehensive report. The application for 254 Collingwood Street was to amend a site-specific, put in place a site-specific amendment to allow 2 dwelling units on the property. There were no changes to any of the provisions regarding setbacks, height, or anything to the already existing zoning. It was purely to address the limitations restricting 2 units on the property. The A4 zone, the existing zone, actually allows 2 dwelling units on it. However, there were 2 things that were contrary, that this particular proposal didn't meet, and it related to the lot size. The area and the frontage needed to be larger. The location, in context here, is a downtown area, and I believe the applicant described it as just on the outskirts of the Queens area. These are long blocks. Collingwood is a fairly long block and short-faced. It's all residential on both sides of the street, as on the other side of the street as well. The only non-residential building on the parcel is the church on the corner, sort of kitty corner to the rear yard of the subject lands. This is the existing house, and no changes are proposed to the building. In the layout, the changes are all internal and relate to the layout of the building. The official plan amendment, the yellow, and this is Exhibit D from the your planning report. The yellow is a residential zone. No changes to that, and the proposal is consistent with that. This is the existing zoning in the area. As you can see, there's a variety of slightly intensifications, site-specific amendments that have already accommodated some of the proposals that we're looking at in this application as well. The floor plan, this is primarily a lot plan drawing. It shows the existing and the proposed. As you can see, the layout of the building has remained the same. The difference primarily is the parking, and at the back, the laneway is already there. There are no real exterior changes, and this parking layout is already permitted, so there's no amendments to accommodate that. Again, these are the interior floor plans. The applicant also reviewed them for everyone. They are just a methodology of accommodating 2 units. The second floor is one of the main changes. The one I'd like to highlight for you is the sub-level. This is a cellar level of the building. There are actually the part of the layout, the 8-bedroom layout now, includes 2 bedrooms in the cellar. However, these are not actually allowed in the current zoning provisions. The zone actually prohibits the bedrooms in a cellar. We discussed this with the applicant, and the applicant has understood that it's contrary and has agreed to remove them, and has actually already converted them into storage rooms, which are permitted under the zoning bylaw. So his actual proposal has changed slightly from the original application. The original application was 2 4-bedroom units. Upon review and discussion with the applicant, the draft bylaw being presented actually will accommodate 2 dwelling units, but with 4 bedrooms on one and 2 on the other. In response to the public comments, well, there haven't been any, either to the signs or to the notices, and we did not receive any tonight. This is a summary chart of the zone provisions and how it complied or did not comply. The two that are being amended with the draft bylaw are for minimum lot area and for minimum frontage for a two-dwelling unit. The one that's highlighted on the bottom, I hope I got it here, the one we discussed about the dwelling unit in a cellar, that is not being amended. The original application would have required an amendment to that, but we're leaving it as is, and it still prohibits them in a cellar. Upon review, we've concluded and make the following conclude the following: that the proposed dwelling, two-unit dwelling house is consistent with the built form in the neighborhood. The proposal contributes to the overall unit density in the urban boundary. The overall usability of it is still, based on bedrooms, is similar to what's originally there. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment complies with the provincial policy statement and the official plan and constitutes good planning. Based on the above, the staff recommends approval of the recommendation of the zoning bylaw amendment for this property.
Thank you. I'll turn to the committee. Any questions regarding? Yes. Councillor Oosterhoff.
Yeah, no, I like this. It looks fine to me. Just a quick question. Will the basement, so they're going to make storage, is the bathrooms going to stay down there?
The bathroom's already there and it may remain. There are no prohibitions on having the bathroom there.
Okay.
Great. Can you take the chair briefly? Thank you. So what is about to be approved, what is the total number of bedrooms within the two units? Is it going to be 8 or 6?
It would be 6.
It will be 6. Okay. I will say I support secondary suites. And I'm always appreciative when a proposal comes forward that ensures that the secondary suite is going to be built to code under current building standards. And so how can we be assured that these 2 bedrooms that I would presume are illegal at this time, 2-bedroom basement, will not end up going back to 2-bedroom in the basement? And what kind of opportunity would the owner, current or future, have to by right get the right for secondary suites?
The building inspection process will inspect it. We have discussed it with the building inspector about highlighting the use of those lower unit rooms. After the inspection process and the occupancy permit is issued, there are limited opportunities to go into someone's home. At that point, it's someone else's home, the tenant's home in this case. Unless there's a complaint, there wouldn't be an opportunity to go in. That's a limitation of how we can inspect people's homes. With regard to future opportunities to adding those in by some other means, you mean, I'm assuming you're applying for additional changes or regulatory changes to allow them?
Yeah, if in future there was a desire to do that. I believe Mr. Newman had his hand up. He may have something to say regarding where we're going with secondary suites and the official plan.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just on the second residential units, just because we're working on zone provisions to enable that more broadly. So when those come into effect, this property would not be eligible for adding second units in addition to the two-family dwelling that's being sought with this application. So we're putting a limitation in place that you can essentially only have one second unit on a lot that already contains a unit.
Thank you. So I would hope that when the rebuild is going on, that there'll be an opportunity for that floor to be built to code so that it could, if it became by right, an opportunity to develop a secondary suite there, they'd be able to do it fairly routinely. Does that make sense?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, all the design of this, the bedrooms, the composition, the location will have to meet the code. Yeah.
Just to clarify that, this is being built as a 2-unit building. So they will be built as a 2-unit building to code. They're extensive renovations, and it's a full building code review.
Thank you.
Turn the chair to you now. Are you finished?
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I am
Okay,
indeed.
Perfect.
So now is the opportunity for the public to speak. If there are any questions. Seeing none, we'll move on to looking for a mover and a seconder. I'm not going to challenge this, but yes. Thank you. Councillor Turner, Councillor Sinek. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll move on to, I'm sorry, thank you. I'll move on to the addendum, which we approved earlier. It's the supplementary report for Woodfield Crescent, the Creekside Valley development, and that's been duly moved and received. So that's information that we have before us as well. And the public also have an opportunity to speak to this one as well. If we can move or second, actually, if any member of the public wishes to speak to this, I know that there were some comments earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm going to say would be to agree with what the chair was talking about earlier, and that was a possible deferral of this item to allow for more thorough investigation of the points that were raised in the public portion of the meeting, especially from those residents who live nearby. Now, the thing that concerns me about this, we had an addendum already on this item, and from the sequence of points made and questions answered, it turns out that the proponents actually knew about the turtles situation, but they didn't inform the public, whereas they could have done that. I would have preferred to have that happen rather than have the residents have to raise it and then have to answer it and then answer questions from the committee. So that concerns me, that there was important information that could have been presented that was not presented. So that's my rationale for advocating that the committee would defer this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions from the public, we'll return to the committee. If there's a mover and a seconder for the I'm sorry, we should move and second for the addendum item, which is the supplementary report. Councillor Turner, Councillor Sinek, any questions regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Now we will move on to the application. Is there a mover and seconder to put it on the floor? Councillor Turner? Councillor Sanik? Are there any comments or questions from the committee? Seeing none, would you take the chair?
I take the chair. Recognize you.
And you know what's coming. I don't know if I have a seconder. I don't know if I have committee support, but I really, really am troubled when there's a number of public expressions of concern on the same day that a comprehensive report and recommendation comes forward, and we dismiss that and vote on that. For that reason, I will choose in protest to vote against this if it comes to the floor tonight, although I'm sure I'll support it if it comes to at our next meeting. But I will move deferral in order for us, for staff and the proponents to have an opportunity to reflect on and respond to concerns expressed by the public. So I thereby move deferral for the next planning committee meeting in 2 weeks' time, if there's a seconder.
Oh, I'm looking for a seconder for the motion. And Councillor Osanek will second the motion. So the motion is now on the floor. So what do I do now? I need okay. Any questions or comments on time or place concerning the motion on the floor? Can you take the chair, please?
Since I moved it, but any other councillor can.
I'll pass it.
The chair recognizes you.
Thank you. So, place. That's all I can talk about? No comments, just time or place? Never mind, thank you. So, we'll vote on this now, thank you. So, let's vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, all in favor? Sorry, all in favor? And that, all those opposed? And that loses a vote of 2-3.
You can return the chair now.
Thank you, I will return.
Thank you. So I will, if seeing no further comments, I will call the question. Oh, a mover and, yeah, it was on the floor, yeah. You're confusing me. It's easy, but you're confusing. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It carries. Thank you. So we will move along to the final piece of business, which is the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 652 Princess Street, 662. Oh, did I? Oh, I apologize. I didn't turn the page over. Our next one is Burbrook Road, and that's Robert Clark Consulting Services. But our planner will give a presentation on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow staff, members of the committee, members of the public. So this is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for 1821 Burbrook Road. I'll give a summary of the comprehensive report. So the purpose and effect of this application is to amend a restricted agricultural A1 zone. It's to allow for an existing building, which is approximately 283 square meters, to be used for a fencing contractor business. So the proposed uses for the area are to be used as indoor storage, and the parking of vehicles, the private vehicles of the employees and the commercial vehicles associated with the business, and administrative office, and a workshop that is limited to the use with the business, not a commercial workshop beyond that. So the location of the proposed amendment is between Perth Road and Sydenham Road on the south side of Burbrook, as you can see. It's a parcel that's approximately 5 hectares in size. So it's zoned rural, or sorry, it's designated rural in the official plan, and it also has an environmental protection area that kind of transects the site as well, and that's to the south of the area in question. Again, it's got a restricted agricultural A1 zone, which permits a variety of residential and non-residential uses. This is a conceptual site plan. I'll get to it in a moment, but this application would be subject to site plan control. So this is a conceptual site plan that was submitted by the applicant that illustrates the functioning of the site. So you can see that there's an existing residence to the north, close to Burbrook Road, and then approximately 60 meters behind the front property line would be the beginning of the compound that would be used for the business. And so that area would basically kind of be very carefully delineated in the zoning, and the existing structure that's being proposed would be, the use would be limited to that structure. The structure would not be permitted to be expanded. This is an air photo of the area, just to give a kind of a sense of the character, the rural nature of the area, to see some of the kind of similar form from the air at least. These are a few site photos that illustrate the structure in question, the existing structure. So from the road and from the eastern side of the property along a lane, and then again, kind of from the rear corner of what would be the compound that's to be delineated by the fencing. As you can see in the bottom photo there's a number of the employees' vehicles are on site. So the proposed zoning revisions would have a fencing contractor business added as a permitted use. I would just want to take a moment and say that is not a fencing contractor yard. One of the distinctions to be made here is that fencing is not to be fabricated on site. It's the other uses that are being contemplated. So more specifically, outdoor storage is to be prohibited on the site. As you can read there, the location of the business business activity and the actual structure are to be limited on the property. So there would be limitations in terms of gross floor area for the workshop, and limitations in terms of area for the lot, and also limitations in terms of the setbacks from the property lines. We'd be adding minimum parking and loading requirements and restrictions as well. And there's also a limitation on the number of employees. That's something that we have the latitude to do in the official plan. And in addition, in terms of providing further buffering from the road, the zoning would also implement a series of planting strips that would effectively hide the business by use of vegetation as well. And as I mentioned earlier, this is also subject to site plan control. So there were a number of public comments about this application. I'll go through them. There were concerns about visual incompatibility and changes in the rural landscape. There were concerns about the scale and the nature of the business, the idea that it's industrial activity, that it's not new, and that it's not a small-scale business. These are some things that were put forward. There's concern about incompatibility with the residential character of the area. There was the thought that the applicant could be accommodated in another part of the city. There was concern about increased truck traffic and noise generation. There was concern about the prior work on the site. This was brought to, an application was brought forward in this case because of an enforcement issue. There were concerns about the environmental protection area and servicing, specifically water availability on site. There were concerns about this not being an owner-occupied site. The home at the front is rented. There were concerns about activity being carried out on site beyond regular working hours, and about the business not being limited to the workshop and using outdoor storage. There was concern about associated property and the use thereof. There was concern about it being a precedent for other businesses and site alteration in the future and public notice, and also decrease in property values. So all of these concerns from a staff perspective were dealt with in the comprehensive report, and if you have questions about any of them specifically, I'd be happy to answer them. So in a summary, it's the staff's position that the PPS supports economic development in rural areas. This is a rural area, not a residential area. So as I mentioned, the area is designated rural in the OP, and that permits a variety of uses in addition to residential uses. So the OP specifically does permit small-scale industrial and commercial if it is limited in scale and there are perceived to be no impacts on adjacent lands. The current zoning that's in place, it permits a variety of residential and non-residential uses at this location. And in some instances, those non-residential uses that are permitted as of right are perceived to have the potential to have a greater impact than what's being proposed. Burbrook Road is designated as an arterial in the OP, which is intended to accommodate various forms of traffic, some heavy. Screening is being proposed on site, both in the form of fencing and in the form of vegetative buffers, actually in kind of two layers, one closer to the road and then one in front of the fence where the compound is to be located. Again, the zoning is supposed to be implemented as very site-specific for the existing building, and that, as I mentioned, business activities to be limited on the site. So again, the business area is to be controlled both through the zoning and also through the site plan control measures. And we do have supporting studies and documentation from both qualified professionals and some of the suppliers from the applicants that indicate the extent to which there could be an impact in terms of the deliveries, frequency thereof, and also the servicing and its suitability for the site. And beyond this, I just want to point out that enforcement is something that is available to us as an option if the business does contravene what is being instituted. So we're recommending that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is intended to do the following. It's intended to clearly define where the building, and well, not the building is existing, but where the business would be able to take place on the site, including the functional elements, so the parking and loading. Again, it would prohibit outdoor storage, which we would see as inappropriate at this site. It would restrict the number of employees to 12. That's not the number of current employees, that's kind of a maximum. Currently, it's our understanding that there are 6 full-time employees, and this is a seasonal operation, so that can fluctuate. We're proposing the introduction of additional fencing and landscaping, as I mentioned. And ultimately, it's the perspective of staff that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment complies with the PPS and the official plan and constitutes good land use planning. So we're recommending for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the very comprehensive list. It was a good précis of the report. Any questions from or comments from the committee? Yes, Councillor Sanik. Councillor, sorry.
Thanks for your presentation, Chris. Well, this is a file that's got my attention and several other people as well. So I'm trying to come to terms with it because, as I definitely want to. I'm a councillor that's pro-development and in rural areas as well, and this one has me twisted inside a bit. I just want to be honest about that. And I have listened to a lot of discussions, and I thank staff too for clarifying many different ways to look at this. Is the entire lot going to be rezoned, or just the fenced-in area around the garage? Is it the entire lot?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The entire lot would be given a site-specific zone, but the provisions of that zone would limit the activity to a very specific part of the property, both in terms of the lot area that could be used and in terms of the setbacks to that specific area that could be used for the fencing contractor business.
So it is the entire lot, but site-specific right within that tight zone.
That's correct.
I have to wonder why it's being rezoned with such restrictions, because of you could not just have it for parking and storage under A1?
That's correct. Well, the fencing contractor business specifically would not be a permitted use. And so, and that's what's contemplated there. That's the business, and so that's what we are looking.
Wow, that's quite an effort just for parking and indoor storage. I realize that it's being controlled so much and limited, and I realize, and it seems almost harmless now is my point. I'm going to be honest. It seems almost harmless, though parking can be, and to be honest, I think it's a good business too. I want to say that with all the comments, I understand that this is a good local business. So I have my we need this kind of business in our city, and to not have found them a better location troubles me as well. I'm being honest again. It troubles me that we can't find something that I don't know how they're going to conduct themselves in business and not have everything that's their choice. But that bothers me as well. But I am concerned for the area. I'm concerned because it's a very wet area. I'm concerned already so much parking lot. It's a sponge, it's going to affect a lot of the land there. So I'm concerned for the citizens that live there. I've read through them all slowly, carefully, and I'm in turmoil really about this application and why it has to be there, because we value the business. I can say that to you. We value that business in our area. I just question why it has to be there. There's surely to goodness got to be a spot within our city that can better serve an important business like that. But I don't like it there. But then you have clipped it so much in zoning and all the things that it almost seems harmless. What they're going to do there is just park. And could the existing zoning is A1? Wow, but the reason they can't just keep it the way it is agricultural is quite wide usage. I don't quite understand that. Can you explain that? Why they can't leave it the way it is and just call it whatever else? You're creative. Why do we have to call it something different?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it would likely be disingenuous to refer to a commercial business as an agricultural when it's not.
But it said you can use commercial.
There are limited commercial uses, but a fencing contractor business is not one of the permitted uses.
So it's site-specific contractor. It's about the idea that a contractor is using it.
That's correct. It would be for the fencing contractor business. The official plan does allow for small-scale commercial and industrial, but it does stipulate the requirements thereof, so the specific zoning requirements and site plan control requirements.
Right.
And so we're following our policy directive.
I just wanted to hear it out loud again. I've heard this. I have probably more, but I would like to see it. Can I have another chance to speak, of course?
Yes, we'll public.
And then come back.
And then when we move in second and get the motion on the floor, you'll have ample opportunity to speak to the motion.
Thank you. I'll just sort my thoughts out again. Thank you.
No problem. Seeing no, Councillor Sen? No. Yes, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I have a question along the lines of why are they restricting, or why is the restriction of only 12 employees? Is that because of parking, or is that just the activity on the site?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the official plan does allow for the limitation of employees, and it also provides direction on a limited scale of development of this type. And so by putting a limitation on the number of employees, it by definition would limit the size of the business to the existing size. So right now this is being scoped very much to apply to the existing building and the existing site as it currently exists, so that if in future the business grows rapidly, that growth would occur in a different area.
Okay, so if they had another site and they had 12 employees there, and they have 12 employees there, then that's okay. I get it. All right, but it's just a funny thing. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor. Yep, Councillor Oosterhoff.
Is there going to be a septic system installed, or is there one? Must be.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is an existing septic system, and we have spoken with the health unit, and we have a qualified professional's assessment that the current service with the septic is can appropriately accommodate the business. So there is a requirement from staff that the facilities be located with indoor plumbing, and that it's tied in, and that has been deemed acceptable by the health unit as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions from the committee, I will now open it up to members of the public who wish to speak. If you care to just move to, we'll go him and then you. Okay. And just...
He has a presentation.
Oh, a presentation? You can go up to the podium. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Skibo, and my family and I live at 1850 Burbrook Road, which is directly across from the road from the subject property. According to our official plan and zoning bylaw, there are only two circumstances under which this business, Backyard Fence, can be located at 1821 Burbrook Road. The first is if it's a home occupation of a limited size, which it is not. The second circumstance is if the business falls under Official Plan Policy 31319 that speaks to small-scale industrial and commercial uses in the rural designation. In fact, if it weren't for 31319, there would be no basis for the zoning bylaw amendment. Well, back in 2016, planning staff believed that the applicant's business satisfied the criteria under this section of the official plan. So this is what the policy states, and I've added numbers for clarity. Small-scale industrial and commercial uses in the rural designation can provide a modest means of starting a business. The businesses that grow are expected to move to more urban settings. Other businesses may employ local craftsmen or artisans and remain small. Such businesses may be permitted in the rural designation provided the uses are limited in size and do not have adverse effects on adjacent land uses through noise, vibration, reduction of privacy, traffic, or other impact or hazard. New small-scale industrial and commercial uses are allowed by an amendment to the zoning bylaw. Such amendments must set out specific limits on use, size, location, and number of employees. And finally, all new small-scale industrial and commercial uses in the rural designation are subject to site plan control in accordance with the Planning Act. So the applicant's business has been in operation for about 20 years. By their own admission, they have plans to employ up to 12 either full-time or part-time employees. In fact, they're the largest fencing contractor in the area, and public records confirm they've been awarded government fencing contracts approaching $1 million. This is in addition to the other lines of contracting work. So this business is not a startup, and it's not small scale, nor is it a business that employs local craftsmen or artisans. Backyard Fence is just not a business that's covered by 31319. But here's the problem. The comprehensive report has taken 31319 out of context by stating that businesses are permitted in the rural designation provided the uses are limited in size and do not have adverse effects on adjacent land uses. And I'm quoting what's in the comprehensive report. They've taken this statement from part of the fourth sentence without regard to the three preceding sentences. This is misleading, and it's dangerous because it suggests to you that the official plan supports this application when it does not. Furthermore, the comprehensive report rationalizes throughout that the applicant's use of the property will remain limited in size or limited in activity. And again, I'm quoting this from the report. This is misleading because the concept of limited has been taken again from the fourth sentence, but out of context, suggesting that anything that's limited is permitted, but actually it's not. So look at it this way. The applicant has proposed to establish 100% of their business on the subject site. They've got their administrative offices, a muster area for staff of 12, parking for up to 14 vehicles, a loading and unloading area for inventory that will be delivered to and transported away from the site, storage for inventory and equipment, a workshop for repairs, parking for heavy construction equipment which is floated to and from the site on a daily basis. There's also commercial bins for garbage and steel recycling, not to mention fuel tanks. So this is not a startup. nor is it a small-scale business where the uses are limited. It doesn't resemble what's described in and intended by 31319. But let's say, for argument's sake, that the city interprets this policy as applicable to this business. Then in the same breath, the city must recognize that the business has grown and is expected to move to a more urban setting. Under this policy, you cannot accept one concept without having a regard for the other. Finally, this application effectively establishes an industrial contracting business in the very middle of what is predominantly a residential area. It's not even on the fringe. It's surrounded on all sides by lands that are developed by single-family residences. The business has been operating from the site since 2015, and the area residents have complained to the city regarding the on-site activities that are at times are extensive. Yes. The business does not belong here. This application is an example of bad land use planning. It's not desirable for the city or the residents, and because 31319 does not apply, there is no basis for this zoning bylaw amendment. In fact, an official plan amendment is required. So I respectfully ask that you deny this application for zoning bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. There was another gentleman, I believe. I'm sorry, this gentleman I recognize before. You're next. So.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bob Clark. I'm the agent for the owners, and I would also like to acknowledge that Charles and Mitch Bender are with us this evening, and so if there are specific questions, we'd be pleased to answer them. Obviously, I appreciate the work that's been done by staff in providing the comprehensive report, and I certainly support the conclusions that have been reached there. I wanted to be clear that in our opinion, and I am a professional land use planner, the rural designation does support a range of economic activity, and it's our opinion that with the restrictions that have been imposed on this as a result of the work of your staff, the definitions, the fact that the fencing contractor has been defined, that there is to be no on-site sales, there's to be no on-site storage, and the limit of the employees, in my opinion, that fully qualifies as a small-scale industrial use, which is suitable and meets the criteria of your official plan. I'd also like to comment on the fact that as a result of working with your staff, we have provided a site plan which provides screening, which I believe makes this use, even though I think in its natural or its current state it is compatible. This further improves the compatibility of the use that's proposed here. As was mentioned to you, there have been a number of studies that have been done in order to address the concerns that have been raised by the neighboring residential uses. Those studies include a noise study, which found that the noise standards met the Ministry of Environment and Culture and Ministry of Environment and Climate Change standards. There will be limits on the operating times that this facility can be operated. There was an archaeological study, there's been a servicing study, there's been comments from the Conservation Authority, all of which support the proposal and have provided us with the details that you have before you. In my opinion, this is a compatible use with the adjoining residential area, but I would comment that this is a rural area, and there are a variety of uses permitted within the rural area. Those are my comments, and we'd certainly be available to answer any questions.
Thank you. This gentleman behind you that will jump on the mic if he can. Thank you very much.
My name is John Black, law firm of Black & Black, 225 Bagot Street, Kingston, Ontario, K7L4X1. I'm speaking on behalf of Sonia Harmson and John Harmson, who own property immediately in the area and also reside just down the way at 1759 Burbrook Road. One thing I'd want to make very clear, my key element here, I concur entirely with some of the comments that were made by Mr. Skibo, and that is the official plan 3.13.1 has to be met. And there's a certain point where you bend something so far that it's no longer what it was intended to do, okay? And the notion is, as well, a good test, is it okay if this was done to every single property in that area? Would it be okay if we had 12 employees for commercial business in each and every property? And I've only got 5 minutes to speak, and I don't get a chance to respond. So I'll come back with, I think, the response is going to be from planning, okay? The response is going to be, we consider each application unique and on their own circumstances. Guess what? As a lawyer, precedent means a huge amount. And this is setting a precedent that even if the city turned down something in future, would set for an appeal. So be very careful to consider this. I'm not saying not to look at all the aspects, and I'm not going to go over my entire summary, which I provided previously as attached to appendix to the report. I can't remember whether it's H or J or whatever, but the number of alphabetical references to the appendices is a pretty good indicator that the neighborhood's really not willing to view this as acceptable. Now you have other businesses which are fitting in the rural designation, much fewer employees. And remember, we've talked when we had the introduction here and the question was posed by one of the councillors, basically storage and basically parking. Well, it's not. If you look closely, it's storage, parking, and repairs, not significant repairs of stuff, and that can include equipment, that can include other, that'll happen. And guess what? The noise attenuation, those studies, I doubt very much take into place what banging around the stuff in terms of repairs brings to the party. And we have really fundamentally residential area which is accepting of the things that will come under the official plan. But to approve this, I would suggest bends the interpretation of that section 3.13.1 so far, it's really unacceptable. If they want to do this, then bring an application for, amending the official plan so it fits. Let's also remember how this comes about. This comes about because, and first of all, I have admiration for the business of the people who are doing this, okay? So my critique is not of them. My critique is doing this at this location. And the way they got here was to buy a lot without properly checking the zoning and making sure they could operate it here. They operated it for the better part of 3 years, as you'll see from your material. Again, contrary to the zoning, they were allowed to do that, and now attempting to rectify it. And there are so many other locations that could be doing this at, other than this rural designation location, and abide by the official plan, okay? So let's find the right area, the right usage. Unless you can say that every person along there should be entitled to have a similar business, 12 employees, parking for 12 employees, plus a residential thing that they don't actually reside in. So this isn't a commercial activity for the fellow who wants to be a resident and operate a small business that fits the official plan. Really strongly, it doesn't hit the OP in the correct section, sets a precedent for all other properties. Activity.
One minute.
That's pretty much my time. Okay.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you. And does staff have an opportunity? Yeah. Are there any comments or questions you wish to respond to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much for your comments. In terms of the scale of the business, The official plan does not provide specific guidance on what constitutes small scale. And so in that regard, we have to, in my friend's words there, we do have to look at every application based on its own merits. That is accurate. And in this instance, we were looking at the functionality of the site and whether the size and location of the site and the potential mitigative measures could be used to appropriately accommodate what is being proposed. In terms of the neighborhood and it being a fundamentally residential area, I do want to return to the notion of what is permitted as of right under the current zoning. So one of the permitted uses, for example, agricultural uses are a permitted use. And one of the permitted uses as of right is a livestock auction facility. And so a challenge from a staff perspective is to contemplate whether that type of use would have the potential to have a greater impact than the type of use proposed. I would argue that it would. And that's as of right, as opposed to a situation where we have the ability to put a fair number of controls on the situation as it currently exists. In terms of the 31319, I think it's important to consider the policy in the broader context of the official plan as a whole. That's something we have to have regard for. So based on those points, that led us to the position of support. Are there further questions?
I'll go back to the committee in case they have any. Comments or questions of staff? Is there a mover or a seconder? Oh, did you have some comments you wanted to make? Yeah, floor is yours.
We're going to vote soon, are we? I just find it amazing that we can be that read the same paper and just have such different interpretations of it. I find it very troubling, and I wish it was better. And I don't think we do our rural businesses many favors. And I can't support it. But I feel really bad for the business because I'm one of them. That's not a conflict of interest. That's just sharing the difficult journey it is to be a business in this city today. I'm almost embarrassed. And so here they are, they've gone this far, and I don't know why we're there. I don't know why we're there. And, but we are for them, and I think the term of bending it just seems like that, and I do respect the work of staff, I do, and I've told them that. It's not about that, because ultimately they're doing what we wanted. We want to find a way to find a place for business out there, but, and here we try in that, but unfortunately, I know you say it's a rural area, but there's a lot of houses there, and I'm worried about the precedent as well. I don't think when you build a house next that close, even though it's agriculture, I don't know if they're going to do repairs there. I don't know, but it's unfortunate that you'd have to go through this kind of zoning just for the limited use. It's clipped so much that I feel embarrassed for the business that they can't do what they want, and I'm 100% sure we can find a better location than that. So, that kind of controlling on a business, as a businessman, I'm telling you, that is unbelievable to me. But I'm saying that out loud. So I'm troubled by it. I think maybe the council should review it. I think council should swallow really hard and realize that, city council, that we have let our businesses down. So I hope that we can discuss it there somehow. I can't see my way of supporting it.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? I will look for a mover and a seconder. Is there so Councillor Sanik moves, a seconder? It's about to fail for lack of a seconder. Have courage. Seconded by Councillor Turner. So it is now officially on the floor. Anybody wish to speak to the motion as, yes, Councillor Turner.
I think it's a very difficult motion to vote on, and that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick comment on the process. Whatever decision is made tonight goes to council, probably the first meeting in early July for approval. At that point, that is, if whatever decision we make, if it's upheld at council, then that becomes the position of the city of Kingston. A lot of, we have delegated authority for site plan to our staff. And so site plan quite frequently is done by staff with the developer and doesn't come back to planning or council. There is an opportunity for what's called a bump up. And often bump up is where after whatever if it's approved at council, a bump up is requested, often by the district councillor, seconded, and we pretty routinely support bump ups at council. And if that happens, that's an opportunity for the site plan process to come back to planning in a public, for the public to see where we're going with that. So that's the way, a bit of a process wonk. That's the way the process can work. Just for your information. So this is a very difficult decision to make, and it really, really does come down to whether we can get our heads around, is this truly, does it fit the official plan test? Is it indeed a small business, remains a small business, and likely will? And it's a tough decision. And again, I respect the staff and the report, but the reason we don't delegate all authority to staff, the reason we have elected councils, is so that we can reflect upon those recommendations. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go that far. I should have transferred the chair. Yeah.
I'll turn the chair back to you.
Thank you. See comments or questions? I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? So that fails. It will now go to council with a report. Now, I believe that when we turn down a recommendation of staff, we're given an opportunity to write our rationale for that. And you now have, we now have 4 people that can, the only person that doesn't have to write their rationale for their vote is Laura. The rest of us, we should sit down over coffee and do that. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm told that we should be doing that now. I'm going to turn to staff and see if, considering the lateness of the night, and if we were to get that to you on Monday, would that be adequate to go into the report to council? Okay, I guess the options for us are to call a recess to write a brief rationale for the decision that was just made by us and to give it to the clerk at this time. I would propose...
Point of order. In the past, when we've done this, it was done at council and it was prepared between now and council. Why does it have to be done now? What has changed?
That's a good question. The time it was done previously, and you're right, Councillor Stroud, it was done twice, but when Councillor Stroud did that, it was done with a recess at council. I would, given the lateness of the hour, I would prefer not to recess. However, if the will... Our Director of Planning has suggested that as long as we get our act together, when the recommendation, correct me if I'm misspeaking, but as long as we have the rationale for the decision and it's available when the report comes to council, that will give us some time, and I think Gary can buy the coffee and we can get together and do that. Okay? I see a few nods behind me, so. Yes, Councillor Oosterhoff.
Just to be clear, so council overrule and pass it still, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And council often defers to staff on
sure. Thank
those
you.
things.
But it's still before that.
And all of us will have an opportunity, both the 5 of us, but our 8 colleagues will have an opportunity to speak to this when the planning recommendation goes to council. So, okay. So, we'll move on to our final comprehensive recommendation, which is 652 Princess Street, and it's FO10 Consultants and 8 Sage Kingston Development, and there's a recommendation before us. We've had a couple of public meetings and an informal neighborhood meeting just a couple of weeks ago. So we've had a kind of thorough kick of the can, but I'll now invite our lead senior staff person to speak to this recommendation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of Planning Committee, staff, as well as interested members of the public. The subject of my presentation this evening is to present the staff recommendation with respect to applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. The subject site location is municipally known as 652 Princess Street, 662 to 670 Princess Street, and 551 Victoria Street. As the chair has noted, these applications have been before the committee through a statutory public meeting that was held roughly a year ago on June 8th, 2017. And the evolution of the proposal since that time has seen 3 subsequent submissions, 3 peer reviews, being the Heritage Impact Statement, the Urban Design Report, as well as the Traffic Impact Study. And elements of the design have also been informed by technical expertise provided by Mr. Brent Todderan. In terms of the purpose of the application, they're applications for official plan and zoning amendment to facilitate the construction of a 10-story mixed-use residential commercial building with 325 residential units and 680 square meters of ground floor commercial. The unit composition of the proposal currently consists of 29 bachelor units, 196 one-bedroom units, 93 two-bedroom units, and 7 three-bedroom units. This slide provides the Princess Street elevation of the current recommended design. As you can see, the proposal consists of a 4-story podium with retail at grade. A lot of work has gone into the facade in terms of working with different materials, articulation and fenestration, in terms of breaking up the horizontal mass of Princess Street into 7 fairly distinct components. The design incorporates a sheltered colonnade. The current recommended proposal incorporates the retention and restoration of the Heritage Building at the corner of Princess and Victoria Streets, known historically as the Karnofsky Bakery. The upper stories of the building, of the modern proposed building, include or consist of an L-shaped form, and there are green roofs now proposed on the 5th and 10th floors. This slide provides the conceptual site plan of the proposal. I'll note that there are 7 ground-oriented units along Victoria Street that are proposed. There's a centralized interior access to the underground parking currently, access via a rear lane with access egress at Nelson and Victoria Streets. There are 48 surface parking spaces proposed and 111 underground parking spaces. And the design now incorporates a number of greening elements of the perimeter and the rear of the site with gathering areas and seating areas. In terms of the overall chronology of the applications, a pre-application meeting was held on September 26, 2016. The Planning Act applications were submitted on May 8, 2017. The statutory public meeting, as I mentioned, was held on June 8, 2017. And 2 non-statutory community meetings have been held on May 10th, 2017, and 1 just recently earlier this month on June 5th. In terms of public notification for this evening's meeting, a regular meeting notice was provided to the 120-meter radius from the site, going to 131 property owners. Residents who requested notice received the notice as well. That totals 31 residents. The on-site signage was updated, and a courtesy ad was placed in the Kingston Week Standard. Slide provides the neighborhood context to the subject site with frontage on Victoria, Princess, and Nelson Streets within the Williamsville Special Policy Area. The next few slides that I have included just provide a visual photographic overview of the context of the site. This slide is a view looking west along Princess Street. Next slide is a view looking north on Victoria Street, and in the photograph you can see the designated building across the street known as 647 Princess Street. The slide shows the existing gas station that is across the road from the site on Victoria Street and also fronts on Princess Street. This is a view looking south on Victoria Street. This is a view from the sidewalk in front of the subject site looking across and northwest on Princess Street, showing the existing car sales business with St. Luke's Church, which fronts onto Nelson Street in the background. This is another view from the sidewalk of the subject site looking east on Princess Street. There is also another designated building that you can see, the limestone structure within the vicinity of the subject site. This is a closer view of that designated property. And this is a view of the frontage of St. Luke's Church, which is located on Nelson Street north of Princess Street. This is a view looking south on Nelson Street with the existing construction underway at 630 Princess Street in the view. This is a view from the north side of Princess Street looking at the subject site. And this slide shows a view of the Karnofsky Bakery building, a listed property under the Heritage Act. The photo shows the current stucco cladding. The applicant, as part of the applications, undertook a building condition assessment, and the building was found to be in good condition, and the limestone masonry underneath the stucco was found to be in good condition and is going to be able to be restored. So the heritage impact statement provided for the applications limited the identified heritage value to the Karnofsky Bakery building, meaning that as part of the proposal, the more modern buildings along Princess Street and to the rear of the Karnofsky Bakery would be removed to accommodate the proposed development. And the Karnofsky Bakery building would be reinvigorated with a proposed commercial use and an adjacent patio use through the proposed development. This slide shows the Victoria Street elevation of the Karnofsky Bakery building, and what's evident from this photo is it just shows the constrained nature of the placement of the building in terms of its location right on the lot line, adjacent to a fairly narrow sidewalk and boulevard area. In terms of the official plan, the red shading within this slide denotes the Main Street commercial land use designation in the official plan, surrounded by the yellow, which is the residential land use designation. The site is also located, as I noted, within the Williamsville Special Policy Area, which is a 1.7 meter stretch of Princess Street that runs from the former traffic circle down to Division Street. And the Special Policy Area was put forward as a means to set parameters and encourage mixed-use intensification within the urban boundary. This slide provides a summary of the proposed zoning provisions. I'm just going to deal with them at kind of a high level at this point. Both the height and angular plane provisions are proposed to be addressed through a height map. That is a recommended schedule to the proposed and recommended zoning bylaw amendment. In terms of the 0.5 parking space ratio for residential parking, that was the subject of a peer review. And in terms of the zoning relief for the accessible parking, I'll note that all of the proposed provisions are compliant with provincial regulation on the matter. If there's additional interest in viewing these provisions for further reference, they can be found on pages 231 and 232 of the agenda package. This is the height map that's being recommended, as I had mentioned and as part of my discussion of the earlier slide. And it's been used in previous applications, and it's an effective tool in terms of ensuring that the future interpretation of the zone provisions is in line with the step backs, the massing, and the built form, in terms of it precisely matching what was intended through the zoning stage. In terms of this site, the Williamsville Main Street study does identify it as having the potential for an 8 to 10 story building, subject to a number of policy criteria that have to be met in terms of land use compatibility and shadowing. Another criteria would be meeting the average depth of at least 36 meters, which this site does. So going back to the initial proposal that was presented at the 2017 public meeting, this slide shows the elevation at the corner of Princess and Victoria. And what was initially proposed was the removal of the Karnowski Bakery building, replaced by what was referred to as a sculptural ghost of the outline of the building. And this area was to accommodate a parkette as well. It's an additional slide to provide the elevation that was proposed in 2017. The public comments that were received at that time followed the themes shown on this slide in terms of building height, density, land use compatibility and transition, shadowing, built heritage conservation, the provision of adequate amenity area, vehicle parking and bicycle parking, traffic, and parkland contribution. Both staff and the applicant thoroughly made note of those concerns, and so there were there was a great deal of work put into the proposal in terms of what you see in this slide. As was noted earlier, the proposal now maintains and restores the Karnowski Bakery building and has incorporated a number of mitigative measures and urban design elements to improve the overall proposal. Through site plan control, it's important to note that staff will be pursuing a heritage easement for the Karnowski Bakery building, and that is an effective tool in terms of an agreement being registered on title to protect the valued heritage attributes of that building and to ensure the long-term maintenance of those attributes. In terms of the Princess Street at-grade experience, the proposal has now incorporated a number of seating areas with some vegetation along Princess Street to kind of add life and vitality to this stretch of Princess Street. This next slide provides a profile of the pedestrian experience at grade. The proposal is incorporating a 1 meter setback from the property line, and then further from that, a 1.5 meter depth area that would be sheltered by a colonnade for pedestrians and shoppers accessing the retail units. One of the key components and improvements in the proposal were some tweaks that were made in terms of the at-grade Victoria Street units. This area of the proposal received some technical input from Brent Todderin, and the exterior entry and exterior amenity space of these units, these 7 units, now implement a slight change in grade with some steps and a trellis area with some vegetation that staff feel strikes the right balance in terms of providing a little bit of additional privacy and the right treatment for the interface of the public and private realm along Victoria Street. So the elevations that you see on the right of the screen are the previous design, and the ones on the left are the recommended design. There are some numbers assigned to the elevations within the recommended design that highlight some of the specific changes that have been made to the proposal. And item number 1 on the slide, corner step back was incorporated at the southeast corner between the 5th and 8th floors to remove the east-facing balconies on the corner. Number 2, articulation cut was made in the east elevation on the cantilevered portion encompassing the 2nd to 4th floors. Number 3, a corner step back was provided at the southwest corner between the 5th and 8th floors. Very importantly, in terms of the rear elevation, number 5, I'd like to highlight the tower setback in this location was carried along the complete frontage of the building, and the balconies were revised in this location to Juliet balconies to address some concerns with respect to overlook in this location. The proposed materials incorporate both red and beige brick to break up the massing along the podium. There is some transparent glazing along the commercial units. The 9th and 10th stories incorporate light gray glass to lessen the visual impact at that location. In terms of vehicular access to the site, a rear lane has always been part of the proposal. It has a straight alignment and connects to both Nelson and Victoria Streets. It incorporates a width of 6 meters, allowing for two-way vehicular movement. And as I mentioned earlier, there's now a centralized interior access egress for the underground parking. Some concerns were recently expressed in terms of the alignment of existing or construction that's underway of those accesses versus the access proposed for the subject development. And so this slide shows the subject site on the right and the existing gas station, and Victoria Street is the street in question here. The red dots denote the locations of the access and egress of those sites. And the slide demonstrates that there is limited conflict and that there is, I don't want to speak out of my area of expertise, but the accesses have been reviewed by our engineering department and they are satisfied with their locations. Similarly, along Nelson Street, this slide shows an approximate location of the access egress for the subject proposal to Nelson Street versus the one proposed for 630 Princess Street. Another key change to the proposal was the incorporation of rear amenity space. The areas bounded in the blue line denote greened areas that incorporate large seating areas for residents, and could also form informal public green space as well, because the area is so visible with the adjacent rear lane connecting to Nelson and Victoria Streets. This interface has also been improved through the incorporation of a rear fence and trellis area to buffer the adjacent residential neighborhood. A component of the parking that I'd like to highlight this evening is that the proposal now incorporates a car stacking system at the rear of the building. 23 car stacker spaces are proposed, and in terms of how they operate, car owners with vehicles within the stacking system would have access and would have the ability to independently store and access their vehicle through this system. And staff feel that it, in terms of where it's been sited on the property, it's a unique and a good solution to an urban mixed-use environment such as the site in question. The provision of on-site parking also includes a car share system where the ratio would be 1 to 3 in terms of counting the number of spaces through that car share. This slide is the rear elevation of the property, of the building, and the car share system would be tucked into the building at grade at the rear. In terms of the logistics of waste and deliveries for the site, this slide's been prepared to show that in terms of the yellow dots within the site plan, 2 loading spaces are proposed adjacent to the rear lane. There is a dedicated waste room denoted by the red dot for the building. There are additional service rooms noted in the green dots at grade as well. And one important quality to the commercial units is the incorporation of a rear service lane at the rear of the commercial units within the interior of the building. So the proposal now includes the retention of the heritage building, where initially a public parkette was proposed in that location. And so often what planners are faced with are a number of competing objectives, and we're striving to find the right balance and what is appropriate for the site. While a public park is no longer part of the proposal, staff will be collecting a cash contribution towards the parkland in accordance with the Planning Act and the city's parkland dedication bylaw. But the site does present some interesting opportunities for potential for a public easement for public parkland over the site, and staff are, should the application be approved, looking forward to discussing those opportunities and engaging with the public around those opportunities. In terms of community benefits, these would be a benefit that's completely separate from the parkland dedication that I just referenced. This slide shows Schedule PS1 of the official plan that shows 4 green streets, with Victoria Street being a priority green street, and 3 other secondary green streets being Nelson Street, Alfred, and Albert Street. The community benefit calculation for this proposal, based on the floor area above what's currently permitted in the zoning bylaw, amounts to a contribution of just over $230,000, which staff intend to use towards the Green Street improvement intended by the official plan for this area. And staff will be treatment. In terms of the overall recommendation that staff are putting forward, in summary, the proposed official plan amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the Williamsville Main Street study. The zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the official plan. The proposed mixed-use intensification within the serviced urban boundary represents desirable development for the area and good land use planning, and staff are recommending approval of the application at this time. Should the applications be approved, the next steps would be to re-engage with the site plan control application that has been filed by the applicant and to move through the technical review of that application. Be happy to take questions or comments on the recommendation.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chair.
much. I believe Laura had a comment or a question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff are proposing one very minor technical amendment to the draft bylaw that's been included as Exhibit B. We've noticed that the site-specific zone number in bylaw 8499 has been used on 2 of the reports on tonight's agenda. So 254 Collingwood Street actually has exception number 556. So we're proposing a technical amendment to the proposed draft bylaw in Exhibit B to reflect a change from exception 556 to exception 557, and that's the only change.
Thank you, and I'm sure the clerk just got those numbers, and when we get, we'll move that quick amendment when we get to the committee stage. Thank you. Any questions from or comments? Yes, Councillor Oosterhoff.
I've never really commented on this. I've watched it evolve, and I'm very impressed with it, and I just want to say well done. I think it's been an exercise in patience, and with Brent Totteran's input, we have a striking building with a lot of innovation and problem solving, and I do want to commend staff and everyone for everything they've done to get it to this point, and it's amazing.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Would you care to take the floor? Thank you. I really appreciate the way the proponents and their planner listened carefully through the whole public process, both the formal and the informal public meetings that we had. And I really appreciate the willingness to accept peer review, particularly Brent Totteran's recommendations, which I think have made this a much improved proposal. I'm looking forward to that beautiful heritage building that will be at that corner as a kind of gateway into Williamsville, although it's kind of a third of the way down. We'll have the Yellow Deli on one side and the former bakery on the other, which will look great in reference to the heritage nature of the city. So I really appreciate that. I will say, and I gave our planning staff a heads up about this, the 2 issues that may come out of some of the public but have definitely been expressed. One is the hope that we would have a parquet green space. Now, I appreciate that we've got the heritage. In my mind, it was never really an either or, but we have that heritage building, which I think is going to be invaluable for the neighborhood. I'm just wondering, through site plan, is it your opinion that we'll be able to really green the streets, especially with the additional setback that we've achieved along the commercial frontage? And I know there's a little bit of a green space at Nelson Street. I really am hopeful that we'll be able to, through site plan, really thoroughly green that space and have benches and have, even though it won't be an official parquet that the city would have to cut the lawn on, it would be nice to have that kind of access, if staff can speak to that. And the other issue that I've heard from a couple of residents is the concern about 10 stories and the shadowing effect on neighboring residential. If you could speak to either of those expressions, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the shadowing, the applicant didn't prepare a detailed shadowing study that was subject to a peer review. The peer reviewer didn't identify any concerns with respect to shadowing because in their assessment and in staff's assessment, the actual impact on the sidewalks of Victoria, Princess, and Nelson, as well as any adjacent private amenity areas, it falls within levels that are considered acceptable within our policy documents and our guidelines. You might have a shadow on Victoria Street at 9 a.m., but within the fall and summer solstice, but it quickly moves off the site to allow for those areas to experience sunlight for the better part of the day at those times. Yeah, so the current site plan does incorporate a great deal more greening in terms of the planters that are proposed along Princess Street. There is a 3-meter setback proposed on Nelson Street where there is a considerable planter area identified right at the corner of the building. And as well along Victoria Street to the south of the at-grade residential units. And then finally, the rear area has really improved in staff's perspective in terms of providing areas for landscaping, having the wooden element of the fence and the trellis, as well as considerable opportunities for seating within that area and enjoyment. I think really add to the proposal and make it an area for both the public and private residents to enjoy.
Thank you. And I think Victoria Street is going to look really, really nice between the trellised entrances for the residents along there and the Heritage Corner site. I think it's much improved from the 2017 presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, just for the committee's benefit, on page 203 of your package has the table that looks at the shadowing analysis that was done in support of the application.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I will resume the chair. If there's any members of the public that would like to speak to this issue. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to staff for the presentation and to the committee for their good questions and the answers. So I have a submission of which the sketch is part, and then I have a written part as well, which I will give to the clerk, so that it'll be on the record. That'll save him from having to worry about writing it all down. So my first point is I generally support the project, and I'm impressed with the ability of the proponent to respond to concerns from the public and from members of the planning committee. I think there's been a very good interaction there, a lot of cross-pollination of ideas, so that's been productive. Now I'm going to get to the point, I'm concerned about the urban design aspect with the traffic, with several other very large projects either approved or proposed in the near vicinity. Okay? So I have a actual redesign of one aspect of your project, which I'm going to describe now. And what that is the SAGE project's access egress for vehicles would be done from Victoria Street only, not from Nelson Street. due to too close proximity to the approved in progress Patry Projects access egress, which is right across on Nelson Street. So if you look at my sketch, which is a little bit inaccurate, I admit. So that's at the very top of the page. It's blocked in there, and that project has underground parking access egress right off Nelson. And that's the intersection of Nelson and Princess doesn't have traffic lights. Okay, so what I'm proposing is that the access egress for the Sage project, which is the rectangular block there, would be from Victoria Street only for vehicles, but you could retain a walkway access from Nelson. Now, you described that you had lost the original proposal of a parkette on the corner of Victoria and Princess, but you retain the Heritage House, which I very much like. So I'm proposing that instead of the access egress off Nelson, that you could create a parkette there. And as Councillor Neal was speaking, he identified that area as already having some nice vegetation. So perhaps those two could be coordinated. So I've got one question that has to do with, are there any car stacking systems currently operating in Kingston? And then my final point is that I would advocate deferral of this file's vote tonight while my idea is studied further. Thank you.
Jim Neal stepped out of the room for a minute, so I'm going to assume chair for now. So if staff could answer those questions, or thank you.
Is that right? My name is Sharon DeLine. I live at... Oh,
sorry, it's a little different in SAS, so I'll be right with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. The current proposal is for a through lane with access to Nelson and Victoria Street. The proposed location and design of the access egress and the rear lane has been the subject of technical review by the engineering department of the City of Kingston, as well as the traffic impact study that was peer reviewed as well. In terms of the functionality of accessing the parking spaces, the car stacking system, and the underground parking, I think those elements are dependent on an access that exits onto both Nelson and Victoria Streets. The staff had prepared a slide which we had showed earlier, indicating that the development at 630 Princess Street with its underground parking garage, that access egress is fairly well separated from the proposed Nelson Street access egress for this site. The neighboring site accommodates 23 parking spaces, so it's a much less intense use on that site. And from that standpoint, relying on the technical input of the studies as well as the engineering staff with the City of Kingston staff are satisfied with the rear lane and the access egress as proposed. In terms of whether or not car stacking systems, if there are others in operation to this scale on other sites in Kingston, staff at this time are not aware of this, but find that it's a good fit and it's well buffered, and in terms of any noise that it would generate, it's subject to a detailed noise study through site plan control to ensure that any noise generated by it meets provincial guidelines. And while a dedicated parkland, parkette is not envisioned for the site at this time, as I noted, the site does present interesting opportunities for public easements to enshrine public access to various components of the site that the public can, perhaps grab a coffee at a local coffee shop and and enjoy the seating area at the rear through a less visually intense location and enjoy that quiet space.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Sharon DeLine. I live on 14 Durham Street, which is across Victoria and the first house facing Princess Street from that particular area. I would like, first of all, to thank Mike Keane yesterday for devoting some time to my questions, and I certainly appreciated his forthrightness, and I certainly appreciated his genuine courtesy. And I want to state that from the beginning. And I think that is generally reflective of the people with whom he works on this particular project. I am pretty pleased, generally speaking, with what has gone on here, but I loathe the height. I loathe the height, and I have to say that. The shadow plans are legalities that exist, but they deal with 9 to 5, which are business hours. This is a residential area, and the thing is, people's lives start before 9 o'clock. Mine starts at 10 after 5 every morning. And so consequently, the building, the sun rises between what used to be the Hind Quarter and the other heritage building, which is now a doctor's office. And that's what I see every morning. My house on the east side is suffused with that light. When this goes up, I'll be forever robbed of that. And I will not get light of that sort until 9, 10 o'clock, 2 or 3 hours later. So I'm not pleased with that. I would like to point out, too, that this city council has worked 20, maybe 30 years to try to resolve the divide between south of Princess Street and north of Princess Street. And if too many buildings that are 10 stories high, or 10, 7, 6, 8, whatever, are put along Princess Street, that divide is going to be resurrected. That divide is going to be resurrected because these buildings, although this is more amenable than the other buildings that, as I said in my letter to everyone else, clutter Princess Street currently, the newer buildings. The thing is that this is more community-minded in that it opens up to Victoria Street. There is a walkway through. But I would suggest to you, I said 6 stories in my letter to everybody else, and I will give you a copy of my letter so that you will have it, and I'll give you a copy of my letter too. But the thing is, 10 stories is way too high.
1 minute.
These are, as we've heard all night, you know, these approvals affect living things, people and animals. And, you know, cold, calculated academic ideas sometimes just don't fill a vacuum. There has to be a balance between the letter of the law, if you like, and the spirit of the law. And in some instances, it just, needs maybe more recalculating. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, would you care to, was there anything you care to respond to there? Thank you. So we will move back into the committee then, and I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Turner, Seconded by Councillor Osanek. Yes, and there is a technical amendment for us to add, which, again, moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Osanek. And it's a technical, straightforward one. All those in favor? Carried. I just want to say, and we heard this a little bit at the at the neighborhood meeting we had, some criticisms about and some frustration that we have what I think is a wonderful secondary plan, which is the Williamsville Corridor secondary plan, which we based our zoning on, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think I can still say it's the newest piece of zoning in the city. And there's been some criticism that we haven't seen on the street what we saw in the plan. But really, we're just now getting to the stage where we're approving designs that followed closely that Williamsville corridor recommendations that came out of the secondary plan. And so I'm looking forward to both this and the podium development, because although I still have some frustration at times with the angular plane not being quite what was recommended, there's going to be, I think, great improvement on the streetscape, and so I look forward to us seeing the fruits of the secondary plan being actualized in the next couple of developments. So I look forward to that, and I'm quite pleased to support this development. Thank you. So, any further comments, questions? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And we have one other thing, which was, I believe, just an information report, although we had the urban pending and committed housing supply and lifespan review, which we received earlier in the briefing. Seeing no further comments on that. No, it's not a recommendation. I'm not going to. I don't want to get. So, the recommendation is information purposes only. Any motions, notices of motion, other business, correspondence we received. And I also forwarded the one letter that we all received. Date and time of the next meeting, bright and early on July 5th at 6:30 p.m. So, looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Oosterhoff, Councillor Turner, all those in favor? Carried.